Good morning, Vagabroads and Vagabros. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. I am sitting in beautiful San Diego. Karen is working for the week, and we're going to the LA Auto Show this weekend. So if you're going to be there, please say hi, because we're going to be wandering around not knowing what we're doing. We have been getting a lot of questions recently about what it's like getting stopped and possibly shaken down by the police in Mexico and Central America. And I wanted to address that because I know a lot of you are planning trips soon, and it's a big fear. It certainly kept me up at night. It's one of those things that far more realistic than bandits and things like that happening. You will deal with the police in Mexico and Central America. We have a lot to say about it. So grab your coffee, settle in. I'm long-winded. The first thing I want to do is tell you a couple of stories that happened to us, how we dealt with it. I will tell you that how we dealt with it wasn't always the best way. We weren't trained. We didn't know what we were doing, but we did have the privilege of spending some time with Graham and Louisa Bell early in our trip of A2A Expedition. They gave us a little Overlanding 101, and one of the things that we talked about was how to handle these situations when they happen. So we had that always in the back of our brains, and it totally worked out for us. First of all, let me tell you, it will happen. You're not going to drive from wherever down to wherever and not encounter the police in Mexico and Central America. You will. You're not going to get that lucky. Now, how it goes is a different matter. You're going to hear a lot of talk and probably read a lot of things about bribes. And, you know, I'm not going to judge you for what you decide to do on that. You'll get on a lot of the forums and people will say, absolutely don't pay them. Some people will say, just pay them and be done. These police don't make a lot of money. I will tell you that we never paid them. But that's not to say we didn't consider it or there wasn't a situation or two where we were certainly prepared to. So first, let me tell you a couple of things that happened to us. We had made it through 5 months of our trip in Mexico without getting pulled over. I don't mean checkpoints. Everyone has a checkpoint. You get pulled over by checkpoints all the time, checking your passports, checking your vehicle, import permits, things like that. And that's never a big deal. If you're organized and you have your documents, that's usually a 30-second stop. If you have a dog that barks like ours, it's a 5-second stop. Keep it moving. But when I'm talking about are real pullovers, the kind where you get out of the car or they're asking you for more documents, or you just know that they're trying to get anything that they can get. Now, this is different than dealing with the police in the United States, and please don't try to translate any of this to dealing with the police in the United States. These things will not work for you there. So we had gone through 5 months of Mexico without any major pullovers, without any really at all, and probably had gotten a little bit complacent at this point. But I think the universe looks out for us, and if you know me and Karen, you know that we rarely argue, which is surprising. I'm Puerto Rican and super volatile, so it is a testament to her that we rarely argue. But the couple of times that we did get pulled over that we got shaken down. We got pulled over probably 9 times throughout our trip. Total shakedowns happened 2 to 3 times where they were trying to get money out of us, and that was obvious. We got really lucky, and it's weird to say this, that those times happened to be on the few times Karen and I had been arguing that day. For me, my senses are a little bit sharper when I'm a little bit angrier, and Karen's patience is a little bit slimmer. So that probably worked for us. We weren't acting out of fear, we were acting out of annoyance. And with police in Mexico and Central America, that seemed to help us out. So when the first time happened, we had just hit the Yucatan. Now, the first thing you need to know is the real danger areas are the tourist areas. Places where tourists go are places where police target. It makes sense. Tourists have money. They know that they'll be coming through. They tend to be a little bit more afraid and out of their element. So we had just pulled into the Yucatan. We had been arguing a little bit that day, and neither of us were in the mood. Had it been any other day or even earlier in our trip, I don't know that we would have handled it as well, and we might have offered that bribe. Please don't make that your first go-to. It's not good for anyone. It's really not. It's bad for other travelers. In the end, if it's a matter of your safety or your car getting taken, something like that, then I'm not judging. So what happened, we were pulling into the Yucatan, and we saw the police officer sitting in his lounge chair on the side of the road. And there is something that Graham Bell likes to say a lot, and it's totally true. The wider the cop, the longer the stop, and it's totally true. He had been lounging, waving everyone through, not stopping anyone, but he saw us coming. And it's hard not to see us coming. We have a giant bullhead on top of the car. Our car is huge. We've got our orange Max tracks up there. We make a statement when we pull into town. So I saw him take his orange cone and put it out right in front of us, and we stopped. Now, Gracie barking in the back of the car usually helped us out. Almost all the time, people would see Gracie and just wave us on. This police officer was a little bit different. Now, we are very organized when we travel. We have 2 envelopes in the car at all times. One is our border envelope, where we have every document that we need for borders in that one. And one is our roadside stop envelope. So the first thing that I want to tell you is eliminate all of the legitimate reasons that a stop can get ugly or delayed. And by doing that, anticipate everything they might ask for. They're going to ask for your passport. They're going to ask for your vehicle import. They're going to ask to see your visa if you have one. Sometimes they're going to ask for your international driver's license, which, by the way, in Mexico is not actually a requirement, but we were so glad we had it. Multiple times it helped us out, and it was one less thing that they could ask for and us be able to produce. So we had produced all of those documents, and we were friendly. And always be friendly. Be friendly, be respectful. Don't pander. Don't be too friendly, but be friendly, be respectful. You know, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? All of those things. So we had done that, and the police officer wasn't done. And we both saw it coming. Like I said, we weren't in very good moods. He pointed to the back window, and he said, roll down your window. My Spanish was not as good at the beginning of the trip as it is now. I think now Duolingo says I've got like 65% fluency. It was probably 20% then, and Karen's was even worse. But he pointed to the window, and I said, you know, we have a perro, tengo perro. And he said, está bien. Okay, she's going to bark at you, but you're welcome to look. So I roll down the window, and Gracie's barking, and he looks inside the car, and he points, and he says, in Spanish, in whatever way he said it, he said that our dog needed to be in a cage in the car. Now, about 10 minutes back, I had taken a photograph of 10 people standing up in the back of a pickup truck on the highway, going about 60 miles an hour. So immediately, again, I'm in a bad mood. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm angry. I went total Hispanic woman on him and said, no necesito caja, which is cage, for perro in Mexico. And he said, sí, necesita caja para perro. No. So we go back and forth for a little while. I show him the picture of the 10 people in the back of the pickup truck. And he actually searches our car a little bit. He opened our hard drive cases and smelled them, which was really random. But he was looking for a reason, and he kept insisting that our dog needed to be in a cage. So it got to a point where I started remembering the things that Graham and Louisa had taught us, and one of those things was, you have all day. These police officers, they're looking for the quick 20. That's what they want. And to avoid that, the first thing is to be as patient and as calm as possible. So we relaxed. Karen remembered it too. I could see as we were having that eye communication. We both got out of the car. We leaned on the car. We were very relaxed. We had all day long to sit there and argue with him. And it got to a point where it was tiresome for him. So we knew that he needed an out. He needed a way to let us go and still maintain. So I, in what I think was a stroke of genius, pointed at our metal cargo barrier inside the car. And I said, todos carro es caja. The entire car is a cage. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both knew it was all bullshit. What he was doing was bullshit, what I was doing was bullshit. And he said, está bien, and let us go. Now, one thing that also helped us on that, and this is a very standard rule, no matter how fluent you may be in Spanish, your best tool is not being fluent in Spanish. What you want to do is speak as little Spanish as possible and as much as necessary. For me, that's easy because that's all I speak. I only speak necessary Spanish. I don't speak fluent Spanish. So I was able to know just enough to know when he's talking to his partner, when he's full of shit, and not so much that it was easy for him to communicate. Now, for me, that confused them some. They would look at Karen, and obviously they didn't think she spoke Spanish, but they would point at me and say, you know, you habla inglés. And no. Puerto Riqueño, Americana, no Spanish. Obviously, I don't speak good Spanish. So that scenario worked for us that day. The next time that we got pulled over is the wrong word, and it was totally legitimate. We had illegally parked, but we walked up to the car. We were in Playa del Carmen, another very touristy area, and we walked up to see the police officer trying to yank off our license plate. We're trying to cross the border in a few days, and we did not need our license plate. We needed it. So I go running, no, what are you doing? And we were totally illegally parked. I didn't realize it when we parked, but we absolutely were. And that's one of the things that they do in Mexico and Central America to ensure that people pay their fines. they'll either take your driver's license or your license plate. So one of the other recommendations I have for you is, if it's possible, take extras with you. If you have to report 1 or 2 stolen, whatever you got to do, you've got to take a couple of extra driver's licenses with you if you can. It will ease your mind when one gets taken. As far as license plates, we made color laminated copies to take with us, really not for this purpose, but because in South America we'd heard of some places where you had to have front plates, so we wanted to be able to have those. But still, ultimately, I wanted my plate. So no, please don't take our license plate. He talks to his partner. I hear him say to his partner, we can work this out. And at this point, we were totally parked illegally. It was getting late, and the number 1 rule in Mexico is that you don't drive at night. And it was pretty late at this point. So I was considering paying the bribe. I really was. And I heard him say to his partner, 80. And I'm thinking, 80 pesos? No problem. It's like $4. We can handle that. And then he says, no, $80. Well, when you're overland traveling, $80 is a huge amount of money. That's 2 to 3 days of your budget sometimes. So absolutely not. And once again, it had been one of those days where Karen and I hadn't been getting along so well. So my patience was really slim. And Karen took the wheel on this one, and she said, no, absolutely not. Fine. Take the plate. We'll stay and we'll co-pay. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do? Take the license plate. Well, they didn't expect that answer. And the thing is, this is a lot of paperwork for them. It's a lot to do. And ultimately, I don't think they believe that you're going to come and pay. So what's the point? So once we just insisted repeatedly that just take the plate, we'll pay the ticket, fine. We don't even care. And again, we stay cool. We have all the time in the world. He gave me back the plate and said, just go. Okay. Well, that doesn't always work. Sometimes it gets a little bit trickier than that. So the next time that we had a significant pullover was in Nicaragua. And this was a bigger deal to us because we really were working on deadlines at this point in the day. We had a border to cross. We were actually going to try to cross a couple of borders at this point. We were going to do the 3 El Salvador-Honduras border that day, if possible. I might have that wrong, the order of where we were going and what we were doing that day. But we were heading to the border, and we were running late as usual. Because if you know the Vagabroads, you know that we are never on time for anything, ever. And it's not my fault. It's always Karen's. She's not here to defend herself, but trust me, it's true. So we were running late, heading to the border. And the thing about these countries is it's not like the United States. There's rarely ATMs and gas stations. You actually have to find banks or centers where ATMs will be, and they're usually locked and sometimes with security guards. And we had forgotten to go to the ATM. And at borders, you never know whether there's going to be an ATM at the border, and you definitely need cash there. You don't want to use your credit card, even if you can. So we're heading to the border, and we realize that we've forgotten to go to an ATM, and we don't have any money. We don't have any cash at all. We didn't even have cash to stop and buy a bottle of water if we needed it. So we realized we needed to turn around. So we were heading to the border, and we started to make a U-turn in the road, and then we saw the police officer on the side of the road. And he was clearly waiting for this scenario. There was no question. He knew that people would be heading to the border, and it was a great place to stop them. It was a great place to try to take their documents, because when do you need them the most? When you're going to the border. So we stop, and he asks us for all of our documents, which are at this point incredibly organized because we were ready for a border run. So we hand them all to him, and I'm annoyed because I spent the entire night getting our documents organized, and now we're handing them to them. So he asks us for everything he can ask us for. Our passports, our U.S. driver's licenses, our international driver's licenses, our temporary import permit. He even asked to see Gracie's paperwork, which no one had asked for at this point. Honestly, we could have filled our dog with cocaine out of every orifice, and no one would have ever known because no one ever looked at her on the trip, except for this guy. So he asked us for all of those things, and we had all of those things. And then he points at Karen, and he says, you don't have your seatbelt on. Now, again, if you know Karen, she is actually, far more than me, a rule follower. She always has her seatbelt on, and she had literally taken it off to get some of the paperwork that we didn't have in the front seat out, and he saw her do that. So at that moment, I knew that this was total bullshit. It was just a shakedown. And Karen was not in the mood. We had been arguing because she was making us late for a border, and that's unacceptable to me. So she was in a bad mood, and I was in a bad mood. And it was very easy for us to go and start doing the next tip that I have for you, which is arguing amongst yourselves. So that's what we started to do. The first thing Karen says to him is, no, we're not doing it. And she said it in English, and he's looking at me, and I'm doing a bad translation. But she said, we're not doing it. Let me back up. I forgot something. When she gave him our paperwork, his answer to it was, the seatbelt is going to cost you $200, and you need to pay that here. So I'm going to take your driver's license and your passport, and I'm going to keep it here, and you guys go to an ATM, and you come back and you bring me the ticket here, and then I'll give you your documents back. Well, no way in hell are we doing that, especially not with our passport. You don't leave your passport with anyone ever. You might give up a driver's license, fine. You can deal with that. But you do not leave your passport out of your sight ever, ever, ever. So absolutely not. So the first thing Karen starts to do is argue with him. She points to, and again, please don't do these things in the United States, but she points to all of the flags on the car, and she says, we have been through 8 countries now, and this is not how this works. We are not going to pay this ticket here. We are not going to leave our documents with you here. You need to call your boss. And he sort of stares at us a little bit and is trying to figure out what to do. And then Karen looks at me, and we pretend to argue with each other in English, but I would throw in a little bit of Spanish word every so often that I knew he would understand, like jefe, which is boss. And we just ignored him and started to argue with each other. And then Karen started saying, she started pointing at the rooftop tent and talking to me, but so that he would hear it and say, we'll just pop the tent right here. We'll just camp on the side of the road. We're prepared. We've got all day. We can stay here for 4 days until his boss gets here, but he's not taking our paperwork. And we argued with him for 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes even, and finally he just gave up. He just gave up and said, just go. It's a warning. Put your seatbelt on. So, few lessons that we took from that. A, the not speaking Spanish unless it's necessary it's probably the most effective tip. B, the being organized is really helpful. You have to take away all of the reasons that could be legitimate for them to actually do this to you. C, don't ever pay a ticket on the side of the road. I mean, unless it's getting to the point where they really are looking like they're going to try and take your car, which did happen to some friends of ours further south, or it looks like it's getting unsafe or people are getting angry or touching guns or things like that, then fine, do what you have to do. Pay the bribe. No one's judging you. You do what you have to do. And frankly, as 2 women traveling, we already had in our minds kind of what those limits were of the point where we would consider paying a bribe. We weren't quite there yet with this guy. The other thing to note about a lot of police officers in Mexico and Central America is they're really young. No offense to anyone under the age of 25, but to me, under the age of 25, you're a baby. And most of these police officers were babies and frankly, easily intimidated. Also, I think my being a Hispanic woman who can be a little bit volatile helped me, because if these police officers understood anything, it was the wrath of the Hispanic woman, and they didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with it at all. And Karen has gotten very good at also behaving like a Hispanic woman when necessary. So when we were arguing amongst ourselves, I think it looked pretty serious from an outsider's perspective. It also looked like we were willing to sit there all day long. And that really is the next best tip. So first, as much Spanish as necessary, as little as possible. Second, you have all day long. 3, be as organized as possible. 4, don't be afraid to call the bluff. That's when you really know where this is going, is when you're willing to just say, fine, we'll pay the ticket, whatever we have to do, or call your boss, get them here. It's not as bad as you read about. For us, I can't speak to everyone else's experience. We never had a police officer point a gun at us. We've heard of that happening to other people. They didn't make any indications to us that they were going to try to impound our car. We've had that. We've heard about that happening to other people. Even in remote spots when we were pulled over, that makes you a little bit more nervous. You have in your mind these ideas of the cartel and being sold into sex trafficking and all of those things. We've got pulled over in remote places as 2 women, and we didn't experience any of that. Does it happen? Sure. I can't speak to that, but for us, it never happened. And we were on the road for 23 months, and that never happened to us, and we never felt like it was going to. Ultimately, the biggest things for us were keeping our cool and staying patient and staying firm. We argued our way out of every single one. Now, I say that, except for one. There was one pullover that they were completely right, and we were assholes. We had gotten overconfident. Once again, we've been having a bad day, and we were in a tourist area, and that is a recipe for disaster. you will get away with far less with police in the really, really highly populated tourist areas than other places. They're more organized. They know all of the tricks. And frankly, they're not always trying to shake you down, much like our police officers here. They're meeting quotas, and there are ways, there are other benefits that they get from taking tourist money. So we were in Puerto Vallarta on our way up. We did a few more of the tourist areas on the way back home than we did on the way down. And we had been having a shitty day, just running around town trying to do a lot of errands, and things can be more difficult to get done in Mexico than in the States. And there's a transit cop on the side of the road, and he was standing there, and he didn't have a radio. I didn't see a gun, anything like that. But Karen did an illegal U-turn. We were completely in the wrong. And she didn't have her seatbelt on again, which is really random for Karen. And we see him pointing. And Karen looks at me, and I look at her, and she says, should we just keep going? And we made a really stupid decision, and we kept going. We would never do this in the United States ever. But at this point of the trip, like I said, we'd gotten a little bit too complacent and arrogant. And we thought, well, he doesn't have a radio. I mean, what's he going to do? So we kept going. About 5 miles down the road, there's another police officer, and he looks pissed. And he steps out into the road in front of us, hand up, stop, and he's waving us over, and he is the most angry that we have dealt with any police officer up to this point. And he says to us in Spanish that, you know, his partner back there told us to pull over, and we didn't pull over. And that was very difficult for us to argue with, because that is exactly what happened. But we tried. We certainly tried to say we didn't see him, and we're very sorry, and we didn't mean any disrespect. And I will tell you that in the United States, we probably would have gone to jail that day for a variety of offenses. This police officer in Mexico just gave us a ticket for our seatbelt. He did take Karen's driver's license, and we had a big talk about it because she had an extra, whether we would stay another couple of days and pay it. And then in the end, we thought, well, how often do you get to go to a Mexican courthouse to pay a ticket? It'll be a life experience. Let's do it. So the following Monday, we took a cab to the courthouse, and I expected a shit show, honestly. You think about our government offices. I was expecting it to be incredibly disorganized. We never thought she'd see that driver's license again. We walked into the courthouse, and first thing is someone very friendly at the door asks what we're doing, and we're hanging our heads in shame, and we're here to pay a ticket. And she points us to the third floor, and she says, go see Jorge on the third floor. It'll take you 5 minutes. And we go up to the third floor, and we're wandering around, and someone very friendly once again said, can I help? And we said, we're trying to pay a ticket. And they said, go down the hall. Jorge will be at his table, third table down. It won't take you long. Don't worry about it. We go down the hall. We go into this room. There's a few little tables and a lot of stacks of paper. And I look at Karen like, that license is gone. And a guy waves us over, friendly, smiling. He said, I'm Jorge. So we're here to pay a ticket. And he says, okay. And he asks for Karen's name, and he goes through 3 stacks of paper, and he points us down the hall to go pay our ticket, which, by the way, was $23. It was 50% off if we paid it within 10 days, and this was the 3rd day. And we pay our ticket, and we walk back, and Jorge's got Karen's license, and we were in and out of there in 10 minutes. It was, frankly, the most pleasant government building experience I've ever had. So once again, Mexico didn't prove to be the shit show that you hear about. In fact, it was very organized and very friendly. And just not a big deal. It wasn't a big deal at all. I had these images in my head of being punished for being the jerk tourist who ran from the police and all of those things, and it just wasn't true. What I found about all of Mexico and Central America is that what you expect is not what you get. It's just not. There is certainly a wildness to things. There is certainly a different style of organization and of running things, but 9 times out of 10, it's not scary. Getting stopped by the police is always scary, whether you're in the United States or Mexico or Central America. But if you keep your cool and you remember a few things, it doesn't have to be. If you know in advance what your lines are of what you'll do in certain circumstances, it doesn't have to be scary. Karen and I were very good at having these plans in advance. We're very good at reading each other's signals. When she was uncomfortable, I would pick up the slack. She knew if I was uncomfortable, she would pick up the slack. And there were moments of just communication that you get when you're traveling with someone 24/7 and you've been with them for a long time. I knew when we were getting to a point of we need to stop arguing and it's time to offer money. But we never got to that point. We just didn't. So what I'm saying is that, it sucks. getting stopped by the police in Mexico and Central America, but it's not the end of the world. It's really okay. You might not have to pay a bribe. Hopefully you don't have to pay a bribe. And like I said, please don't let that be your first go-to. But it's not a big deal. You'll be all right. Hopefully that's helpful to somebody. I know I'm rambling a lot. That's what I do, and this was unscripted and kind of on the fly. If you do have any questions or you want to know anything else, then feel free to send me a message or shoot off a comment, and we'll be doing a lot more of these. So stay tuned. Have a good day, everybody. I don't know how to turn it off.